And we're live. So this will be an interesting one because when you do an impromptu live show, you don't really know if anyone's actually going to show up to said impromptu live show. So this could be a very short or very long live stream, depending on if anybody comes to join the party for it. But it looks like there might actually be somebody here. So that's one already. That's not bad for impromptu. But I'll start out with like a little bit of a channel update and mention why I decided to do an impromptu live stream. Also, I'm using webcam microphone instead of earpiece. So let me know if it sounds okay to whoever's watching. But anyway, so I decided to do a live stream today because I didn't have a video come out yesterday. And I have been really behind on recording videos lately and have been trying to get better about doing them. But usually I've been like recording, editing, uploading, doing all of that the night before. So I did record a couple of videos today, actually, because I'm trying to get a little bit caught up on videos so that I have stuff that's coming out, but also just like have stuff that's going to be solid content too. I did a couple of things lately that were just kind of random, well, specifically the 10 random book thing. I did an ABC type tag and challenge thing. Tried to do some stuff like that, but I wanted to get some other content out as well, do some more stuff. So like I just recorded today a book review and also a why you should read Realm of the Elderlings, which is where I discovered that my phone has a video size limit because I hit it because I talked for forever. But so trying to do some more book related content, just some other stuff, get caught up. But I thought it would be fun to do just a random live stream. So this is completely, it'll be dependent on, like I said, who's here. If anybody has anything they want to talk about, we'll see how it goes. But that's kind of my channel update there. Looks like we do have a few people. Hello, Sophia. So you're the first commenter. So you win the first comment award for the live stream. But as I said here, what I posted, this is generally just kind of a informal hangout type live stream. So totally dependent on people. If you've got questions, if you want book recommendations, anything else, where you can just kind of talk. And I'll just keep sort of monologuing until anybody else says anything. So if you want me to stop monologuing, you gotta add some discussion here in the chat here, and we'll go from there. So looks like I actually just hit the little review counter says 8 viewers. So there's some of you there. So apparently at least 8 people showed up. That's actually a lot more than I was expecting. Like I said, I was kind of concerned no one was going to show up and it would just be me talking for 5 to 10 minutes before I'm like, okay, I'm done. Nobody's here. So we've got Lynette Reeds in the house. Welcome. And Reading Rainbow, who's I still love your screen name. I've seen you in several live shows and I love the screen name. Thanks for showing up. So yeah, for anybody who just got here, this is still, like I said, pretty informal. If you've got questions, discussion topics, book recommendations, you want to know my opinion on a book or something else or anything, we're very informal for this impromptu live stream. I talked about just the fact that I was specifically going in and just working on recording some videos today and decided to do this since I didn't have one. So we got CD. I just mentioned you in my Realm of the Elderlings video where I said most people like good prose. CD doesn't. I didn't call you out by name in that. Maybe I shouldn't have here, but I was joking with that too. And we've got the Crazed Monkey. I haven't seen you around in a while. Well, welcome. So it's nice to see people here. So like I said, anybody has questions, comments, definitely let me know. I'll keep talking otherwise. So what I'll mention, right now I'm reading this book Mordu by Alex Phoebe, and I took the dust jacket off. I should probably grab it. This is what it looks like. It's kind of interesting. This is a super weird book, though. It's somebody commented as I was reading this that some other people compared it to like a Tim Burton movie, and I'm wondering if Alex Phoebe is secretly Tim Burton, because it does absolutely feel like that. It's just a very strange world, a lot of weird things going on, and it was just like, okay, that's odd. So I still don't know how I feel about this. I'm like halfway through, but I'll at some point do a review because it's been strange. So Reading Rainbow almost finished with Reaper's Gale. So you're nearly done with this series. I had to double check. I know mine aren't in order. I don't think that's there, but you're getting close. It's been a while since I've read this. I've been saying for years now I need to reread Allison at some point. I will definitely get to a reread. I've been forcing myself to not reread for the last year and a half because there's so much stuff out there to read. Well, I was talking about a video I filmed today and haven't posted yet, but I probably mentioned it before. Yeah, the cover is between the cover and the blurb is 100% why I bought this, because I actually got rejected for an e-arc of this, but then Book Outlet had it waiting for it to focus. I don't know how clear it was, but the blurb of this is literally, this is the start of it says, God is dead, his corpse hidden in the catacombs beneath Mordu. And it talks about a boy living in the slums, finding out he's got some magic. There's this living mud that can create life. It's so strange. And I don't know. I feel like I'm not going to know my full thoughts until I actually finish it because it's very odd as a book. So it's definitely different. So is audio sound okay? Anybody, by the way? I think I mentioned that before pretty much anyone was here, but I never used my webcam for audio before, so I want to make sure it sounds okay. Also, I apologize for the brightness because it's really not that bright in this room. I actually have it kind of dim. The webcam really likes to make things extra seeming bright, so I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's very strange, but I was intrigued, and recently I did a video where I read the first chapter of several books and then decided what I was going to read. And I read the first chapter of Mordu, and I'm like, I have a lot of questions that I need to have answered. So I kept reading, and it's not really doing a ton of answers so far, but it's still just very strange. I've heard the ending is crazy, so we'll have to see when I get there. So perfect. Glad to know the audio is good. So nobody else was confirming here. What is your most hated genre to read? That I've actually read, probably my most hated is dystopian teen stuff. I really can't stand it. I tend to be pretty broad with that just because I don't know if it was just I never really did a lot of that. I've read some of it, and it's just most of it seems to be really similar, and I just don't care for it. And it's really popular, but I started Wheel of Time at 11, and then read through that a bunch of times, and started reading bigger epic fantasy. So I never really read a lot of YA, so that could be part of it as why. But that's sorry if anybody here is a big fan of dystopian teen fiction, but it's not a genre I enjoy reading. Which I typically do. I mostly read fantasy and a little bit of sci-fi. I'm trying to get better at sci-fi, reading more of it, because Andrew keeps yelling at me for not reading enough sci-fi. So it's definitely it's an area that I need to get to more. But I have the first Expanse book. I have a few others, Black Sun Rising. The Dark Angel trilogy, which is kind of sci-fi, maybe. That one was weird when I read the first chapter of it, so I'll have to find out. But I have a few here and there I'll definitely get to. But there's so much fantasy out there. It's really hard to read other genres because there's so much fantasy, and there's so much fantasy that I haven't read yet. It's hard to be I'm just going to put this down and read a different genre when my favorite genre has so much I still need to read. So, Crown of Stars. I still need to finish Crown of Stars. One of these days, I'm going to finish it. I've read the first 4 books. I have 3 to go. Book 5 is the longest by a lot, though. So I got to find the time to do that. Then the last 2 are pretty short, so that'll be good. And then reading, I'll be starting to Green Angel Tower, the 3rd book, and Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn later this month, probably toward the end, because that's our buddy read for October and November. So I plan to read that. And that's another one of the big series that I meant to read for a long time. I still got to read the second Thomas Covenant Chronicles trilogy. I still need to read Realm of the Elderlings, which I've been reading very consistently, is one I absolutely need to finish. And then I've just got, a collection of many books behind me. Like up here and up, I've read some of these, but not all. And there's a lot more you can't see. I have too many books. But anybody from the Discord knows I have way too many books. So that's pretty normal. Pretty normal, just book addiction. It's a serious thing. It could be a lot of worse things. But buying books is not great for the wallet. But I've been really good this month so far. I know the month hasn't been here very long, but I've only bought one book, and we're on the 9th. So that's pretty good. One book so far is pretty good. But my wife was just trying to tempt me to go to the bookstore because she wants to go to a store near it. And I'm like, you're crashing me actually being pretty good about not going to the bookstore. And you're like, well, I want to go somewhere nearby. And you want to go to the bookstore? And I can never say no to going to a bookstore. So I've never gotten into sci-fi either, but feel that I should. I'm just getting back into fantasy after spending 10 years mostly reading romance. So yeah, like I feel like I would really enjoy a lot of sci-fi, and the little bit I've read, I've liked. So it's definitely not like I don't want to read sci-fi. It's just there's so much fantasy, and especially when I started being involved in BookTube, I absolutely just realized I'm like, holy cow, is there more out there than I ever realized? And there's so much always coming. And it's not even just like the big name stuff. There's a lot of big name stuff I haven't read, but there's all kinds of just a huge boom of self-published authors as well. And there's so much. So I do try to switch up my genres a little bit. Romance is not typically one that I read. That's not something I'm a big fan of. But yeah, it's a good time to be getting back into fantasy because you have like endless choices at this point. So there we go. It's not too many books. It's just lots of books. That's words to live by. And there's my wife who's joined the live stream, even though I think she's supposed to be working right now. But concurs I have too many books. Did you not see the last comment? It's not too many. It's just called lots. It's, words to live by. Here's a good question. So do you prefer reading current releases or classics? So that is a really tough one for me because there's a lot of current stuff that I want to read. And like, I'm a really big fan, as you can tell, of Brandon Sanderson. So I read most of his stuff, and I have really enjoyed some of the newer stuff that I've read. Like I've got like Canius over here I really enjoyed, which is relatively newer, Lightbringer, Mark Lawrence. So there's a lot of newer authors that I've enjoyed, but also I have found so many of the more classic things that I've loved just a lot because like Robin Hobb, one of my favorite authors. And granted, some of her later books did come out more recently, but they started back in the 90s. I still need to read more of David Gemmell. I read his first book, Legend, which was really, really good. Crown of Stars is like from the 90s, and I've really been enjoying that. So I like to mix it up because there's a lot of newer stuff I like. And I like a lot of the stuff that's being done in modern fantasy that wasn't before. You get a lot more like cool magic systems. Hard magic systems are a lot more common, and I really enjoy those. Just more innovative things. But I also just like deep down, I love my classic fantasy so much. That partially that comes from the Wheel of Time, which did do a lot of innovative stuff, but just really has that classic fantasy feel. That's why too, with like reading Memory Sauron Thorn for the first time, complete classic fantasy vibes while doing a lot of interesting things. So I like to really mix it up. I'll never be somebody who just focuses only on newer stuff because there's so much older stuff that I want to read that I really enjoy. The first Chronicles of Thomas Covenant was another one. That's from the 80s. And even though it's from the 80s and has a lot of classic fantasy stuff to it, it also was like completely different from anything that's being done or that I've ever read since. So there's a lot of stuff out there that just doesn't get talked about as much because it's older, and I've enjoyed so much of it. And it's just, that's why I really like to mix it around. I've given up hope of getting the TBR under control. Over 400 I own, but not yet read. Oh my gosh, it is a mistake to ever check those numbers. I did that recently. I actually cataloged all of my books, and I have read like a third of what I own. So that's better than I thought it would be because I love to read, and a lot of books, I buy books if I enjoy them, and like, I'll get like nicer copies, like, with Farseer, I have these. But I also have a problem with buying a lot of books in general to read them because I like physical books. It would my physical TBR would probably be better if I liked doing like ebooks or audiobooks more. I have partially converted. I do own a Kindle now. I resisted getting one for a long time, but it is really nice for like travel or just if there's a book you want to try, you're not sure if you want to buy a full one. Plus, they put free stuff up all the time, which is cool. So I've gotten a little bit better, but I really still prefer physical books. And if I read a book, I want to have a physical copy. So instead of like borrowing a copy or something and then having to buy it anyway, I just like to buy it up front. I do try to buy most of my books like used or really, really cheap. So that helps, I feel like. So definitely it makes it a little less expensive. Epic, hello, welcome to the impromptu live stream. So this is actually going pretty well so far. We're like 16 minutes in. There's still people here, people talking. So it's good. Welcome to the party. Wheel of Time was Nemesis. Oh, turned you off. Oh no. Oh, actually. Okay, no, that's fair. I read the rest of it. So yeah, reading Wheel of Time on release and then having the slog books be the only book you got for like a year and a half, 2 years, I can absolutely get why that would have been tough. It was up to Knife of Dreams was out when I started, so I got to read up to there and then just wait years for the last 3. Yeah, when you get to those books, it does get a little bit rough with Winter's Heart. Crossroads of Twilight is another slow one. That would have been tough having that be the only book you got. I do still appreciate them going back, especially when you can binge through the slower books. But there's a lot of world building, so like there are good things, but I can definitely get that. That would have been really rough trying to do that at release. So glad that you're giving it a reread. Hopefully you will get through and enjoy it and get to the end because the end is super good. So. Yeah, don't count them. Don't. It's a mistake to count the books you own. I learned that the hard way when I did mine recently. It was not great. Have you ever read any Haruki Murakami? I don't know who that is, so I'm assuming no. Let's Google Haruki. I spelled that wrong already. Murakami. Let's see. You've written. Oh, I've heard of the 1Q841. Okay, I've heard of some of these books. Kafka on the Shore. Okay, no, I have not read this author, but I have heard some of this. What like genre is this? Tracy, let me know. Because I've heard a few of these, but I haven't. But I'm always. It's one of my weaknesses. I'm always happy to be recommended books and add to my pile. But yeah, it looks like there's stuff going back pretty far for this author. So I know a few of these. So yeah, I haven't. But if you've got some specific books you recommend, definitely let me know for sure. And Fit to Be Read says 1Q84 is great. Yeah, I remember that one being mentioned a lot. I know a lot of people read that one. So that's why when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I do recognize that. So fantasy realism. Interesting. Okay. That is actually an area I've not read a lot of, but I am interested because I read some of Neil Gaiman has some like magical realism type books. And I never really thought that was my thing, but I've enjoyed some of his a lot. Like Ocean at the End of the Lane, I really, really enjoyed. And I guess like even American Gods is kind of like magical realism because it's real world, but with magic going on. So those definitely would be something I think that could be interesting. So we've got Kafka, 1Q84, Wind Up Bird Chronicle. I'll keep that in mind. If I come across any of those, for sure I will pick them up. I'm always happy to add more books to my pile. I do like that I was just commenting about how I've been good lately and have not been buying a ton of books, then immediately get recommended books, but it's okay. That's what BookTube's for. That's half the fun of it, is getting recommended all kinds of books. So I will check that out because it is nice to, I was just talking about how I rarely stray from fantasy, but it is nice to do things that are a little bit different. So something like that's like, still has some fantasy elements, but is pretty different. I feel like would work as a nice palate cleanser because I've been trying to get a little bit better about adding in some things. I just, I'm not going to make like a hard right turn into other stuff anytime soon. But it's nice to try some different things. Like the other thing I read that was super different was Daniel Barnett, Nightfall, the first book of Nightmareland, which is kind of like horror, but with some maybe other elements into it as well, and super different. And I really enjoyed it. But that's some of the other books I've read too. If I read a book and I'm like, this is like nothing I've ever read, it's interesting, especially when you enjoy something that's super different like that. So we've got Greg Egan, amazing hard sci-fi author. Did I miss a question? Or is this just general? And one Q84 can be called science fiction too. So science fiction with some fantasy realism elements. Yeah, that's definitely those are areas that I'm interested to get more into. So I'll keep that one specifically in mind because it's been mentioned. And then we've got immediately immersed in the atmosphere. Nice. To the TBR. I figured that's what you meant. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that one now. Specifically, and I'll note the other ones that were mentioned to Tracy. I'll keep in mind. But yeah, that's sci-fi is something I really do need to read more of, just because I feel like I part of it too. Like when I was younger, I didn't read as much sci-fi because it always annoyed me that like my public library in the town I lived in when I was a kid, like most places, they don't have a fantasy section. It's a sci-fi fantasy section, and they had barely any fantasy. It's like plenty of sci-fi, but barely any fantasy. So I always had to like really try to find fantasy. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick to this. But honestly, most of what I have read sci-fi, I have enjoyed too. So definitely need to get onto it. We have Safina. Hello. How far are you in Robin Hobb books? And always like watching my channel. Well, I appreciate that. So I know you, I think, have commented on like almost every single video I've done for a long time. So definitely a loyal viewer. I appreciate it. So I have finished the first 9, and I have then these left. So I just finished last month Fool's Fate, which is the 3rd book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and absolutely loved it. I mentioned I actually filmed a Why You Should Read Realm of the Elderlings video earlier today. That's going to be like half an hour long at least. So I definitely recommend. But yeah, Rainwild Chronicles will be in December. I think we're starting the buddy read back up. So we'll be doing those one a month, and then fits into full trilogy. So it'll be, probably most of the year next year still once we start back up, because that's at 7 books, so it's 7 months, so about halfway into the year. So like halfway into 2022, I should be done. But I mean, after finishing the first 9 books, honestly, it's already one of my favorite all-time series, and Robin Hobb, one of my favorite all-time authors. I've just loved it. And Tawny Man actually felt like an ending. I think Robin Hobb, from what I've heard, stopped writing in that world for a few years and did some other stuff, and then went back to it and added more. There's definitely a ton more story to be told from the point where I'm at, but even just the first 9, it felt like a complete arc, and it was so good. So good. Hello. Welcome to the live stream. So we got Sophia says, which fantasy book should I read before I feel a part of the fantasy community? That's a really loaded question. I would say there are a lot of different possible answers there, and there's a lot of different areas of the community. So like you'll find a huge part of the community that loves Wheel of Time. You'll find huge parts that love Brandon Sanderson, but you'll find plenty of people who don't as well. So I mean, really, it's if you're around, you'll constantly have people recommending books. So I'd say just read stuff that you find interesting, and I am sure you will find people who also like those books. Those are definitely those are 2 authors I recommend. I was just talking about Robin Hobb. The Robin Hobb is not an author that everyone enjoys because of her style. So some people like there's a ton of people who love Robin Hobb, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so that's where it could be rough, because I love those 3 authors, but a lot of people don't. So, it just kind of depends. There's so many people, and in our Discord, for example, there's pretty much no matter if somebody brings up a book, there's going to be at least one other person that's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I know that book. So read what you want, and the community parts will follow. You'll always find people that have common interests. So we have, what are your thoughts about the Malazan books? Just finished book 2 and it was amazing. So I mentioned that slightly earlier. Malazan is a series that it's always tough for me to talk about because I did read the whole series, and it was probably the roughest time I've ever had reading a series ever. I had to like force myself to read it. And usually for me, the first half of every Malazan book, I was like hate reading. And then the back half, I couldn't put it down. I was just so incredibly invested. And that was almost every book. Book 2 actually has one of my favorite plot lines of all time, though, with the Chain of Dogs. So I love that plot line. But it's one of those series that if you're reading it and you want to get through, I do think it's worth it. Like, it is just a masterpiece, the way everything's been put together and weaved together. But it's also one of those series I would never tell somebody you have to read this series. If you're reading it and you're not enjoying it, I don't blame you. I ended up, it's definitely, I think, a top tier fantasy series, but I'm a huge reader. I'm a really fast reader normally, and it took me like a year of my life reading almost nothing else to finish Malazan. So I get when people are struggling. I do think it's worth pushing through, but also, like, if I was trying to read it now, I don't know if I would have continued because there's so many other things I want to read. So it's a tough one to recommend. I do think it's worth it, but if it doesn't work for you, you don't have to feel bad either. So I'm on the fence with trying to recommend that series. It's a hard one to recommend. Rainwild Chronicles are good, but not her best. Haven't read the final trilogy yet. Keep being told they'll break me emotionally. Probably. And loved Soldier Son. I have not heard a lot of people who read the Soldier Son trilogy, so that's actually really good to hear, because after I finish Realm of the Elden Rings, I will definitely be reading that just because I want as much Hob in my life as I can get. I have heard Rainwild Chronicles tend to be one of the lower points, but also that you get a lot of lore about like the Elden Rings and whatnot, so I'm still really excited. And I've heard the Fits in the Full trilogy it will emotionally cripple anyone. So that's, have that to look forward to. Have you read Ender's Game or Orson Scott Card? Love that book, and the sequels are also good. So I did read Ender's Game when I was a kid, and I think Ender's Shadow, the one with Bean, and I thought they were okay. Those were ones that I thought they were enjoyable enough when they were younger. I don't really want to reread because I don't feel like I would enjoy it as much now. I still remember the story pretty clearly. So I think that's, if something sticks with you for good or bad, it's really doing what it wanted to, but I'm not really a huge fan. I don't really have a lot of desire to read the rest. But it's something that I enjoyed at the time when I read it. Well, I mean, the movie was super different from the book, even from what I remember. So I will say that. So probably shouldn't completely base it on it. I actually didn't think the movie was that bad, to be honest. I know it got panned like really hard and a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was fine. I mean, it was different and they changed a lot of stuff, but I thought it was fine. You're welcome. Yes. Oh boy, I probably shouldn't start talking about that on stream, but yes, I really hated the Poppy War. I will not be reading the rest of the series. That was one it did not work for me at all. So it's good we have something in common. I didn't think it was that bad. Okay, I assume this is still talking about Ender's Game, unless there's a Poppy War movie, but I didn't think it was that bad. Granted, if I was like a massive fan of the book, then I probably would have hated it. So I get that, because like that's why the Count of Monte Cristo movie with Jim Caviezel, I hated it, even though it's technically probably a good movie, and I know a lot of people like it, but they changed so much and just ruined it for me. So I think that's always one of those things. As a casual reader of the book, I was okay with it, but they need to do. Yeah, I feel like with most fantasy sci-fi things, series work better. So that's what I think is really cool, is that we're at a time where that's possible. Because I just feel like almost any movie that was made as a part of the fantasy series, they don't usually land because you have to rush things. You have to change things for time. So that's why, even though, since apparently I'm doing unpopular opinions, I don't like A Song of Ice and Fire. And I never really watched the show because the first season, or the first episode or 2 or 3, I don't remember how many I watched, but it was almost like word for word dialogue from the book, and it just like ticked me off because I hated the books. for various reasons. And so I never really watched it, but I appreciate the heck out of it for showing that you can have a really high budget, really well done fantasy series on TV, and it paved the way for the Wheel of Time show, which I'm still hesitantly optimistic for. I'm really excited to see what they do with it. Hey, welcome. This isn't even, you missed all of the Robin Hobb talk. We were just talking about Robin Hobb and Realm of the Elderlings. I was going to say, it's not even one of those streams, but welcome here. Jennifer Robin 72 here, in case you guys didn't know, secretly is Robin Hobb, is my theory, because she will join all of our Robin Hobb streams and answer lots of questions. We have Gorman Gast is really good. I know I've heard of that, but I can't think of what that is. Gorman Gast is fantasy series by Mervyn P. Oh, that's what that was. I was just talking about that the other day. That specifically, actually, somebody mentioned, is supposed to feel like there's definitely some inspiration in Mordu from that series. So I have not actually read that, but yeah, that's I knew I'd heard that, and I was just drawing a blank on it. But well, hello, boiled jellyfish. Welcome to the stream. So it's Safina just asked where I was, and I was just talking about that I've read the first 9. We talked briefly about the Rainmouth Chronicles. I did mention I just recorded a Why You Should Read Realm of the Elderlings video today. This is where I discovered that my phone does actually have a video size limit. I've never hit that before, but when I'm talking about Robin Hobb, it did seem like a reasonable time for me to hit that. And so it got so long that I had to stop recording and start a new video file because I had talked too long about Robin Hobb and Realm of the Elderlings. But yeah, it wasn't anything too crazy specific there. Just whenever it's brought up, I end up gushing about it a little bit. But it's man, I love Robin Hobb so much. But I did threaten in a live stream to go to Alaska, where I think she still lives, and convince her to leave her husband for me. And then, yeah, my wife didn't like that idea very much. But it's Robin Hobb, or Rob Hobb, as my wife refers to her often. So, so Vinesh said, would you normally start a book, finish it, and move to the next one, or read multiple books at a time? So that one... Okay, I have to pause really quick because there's my wife commenting. Of course, you see the part where I threatened to leave you for Robin Hobb. Of course. Anyway, back to the other question here. So, I typically do like to read one book at a time. I used to actually often I would binge series if I was reading a series, and I don't do that as much now. Sometimes I will read multiple books, but I generally just like to focus on one, finish it, and go on to the next. I've tried it out a little bit differently with doing multiple books, or having I'll have my physical book and I'll have my Kindle book. I still can do that, and for me, it's never been I can keep the thing straight. I know some people it's harder to read multiple things because they get things mixed up. I haven't really had that problem. I can remember where I'm at and keep going, but I just generally prefer. And then I feel like if I'm liking one more than the other, even if I'm doing multiple books, I'm probably just going to mostly read that book anyway. So I might as well just stick with a book and finish it. That's just my style. I know a lot of people read several books at once, and if it works for you, it works for you. For some people, they struggle to not read multiple books, I've heard, because they like to switch it up and keep things interesting. And that makes a lot of sense. That's just typically not what I do. She lives a couple hours away from me, considering becoming a milestone. How have you not? I mean, it's worth getting arrested, but if you explain to her how you're her biggest fan, she'll probably talk to you. Yeah, I would have probably found her house in the middle of the night and gotten in trouble. Oh my gosh. I agree. Like I said, it's and my video will hopefully be out soon for anybody who's questioning Hobb, because whenever I talk about Robin Hobb books, I do specifically try to make sure I do mention reasons why people may not enjoy them as much as I do, because it is slow burn. It's very character driven, emotionally charged fantasy, and not everybody meshes with Robin Hobb's style, and that is okay. But I love them so much, and it's really hard not to just tell everyone to read it, because I love the series so much. So I definitely recommend giving it a shot. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But it's Rumbly All the Links is so fantastic, and I just love so much about it. So. Oh man, those were so much fun to do, though. That was the book pickup lines. I still can't believe she agreed to do part 2. But it was so much fun doing those. They were really bad. I did call them really bad. I admitted it was going to be terrible, but those were some really fun videos to film. I enjoyed them, I think, more than my wife did, but it was a lot of fun. So. I mean, can I really be embarrassing myself if I don't feel embarrassment? I thought they were funny. Like, I probably should have been embarrassed from the lines, but you're very good at steering conversations to Hobb, Jennifer, and I am very easily swayed to talk about Robin Hobb, so it is really not hard to get me to. And this is true. I will talk about Hobb all day. My wife has heard me talk so much about Robin Hobb, even though she's not a huge reader, and when she does read, she doesn't read the same stuff I do, so we'll probably never ever read the books, but has heard me talk about Hobb endlessly anyway. So I love Robin Hobb. There's so much to talk about. So it's man, I can always talk. So, and there we go, another Hobb question. Perfect. She's writing a new book or is retired now. So there has been talk. I've heard she is thinking about writing additional books in the Realm of the Elderlings world, but it's not confirmed. So I think I don't know if she's actively writing anything right now. But I mean, the last trilogy came out in the 2010s, I believe. So it's been ongoing for a while. Let me look. Look at that beautiful cover, by the way. I have all the UK paperbacks, so I did not like the mass market paperbacks in the US, and these were a lot easier to get than hardcover. 2017, this last book came out, so it's only been, around 4 years since this last one came out. So I think she's definitely still writing. Doesn't know if she's going to do this or do other stuff, but I will. If Robin Hobb writes a book, I'm going to read it. So I even got The Inheritance, which is like short stories, some of which I think are in the Realm of the Otherlings that she wrote under Robin Hobb and Megan Lindell, which is another pen name of hers. So I got that, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to. Okay, I can't get that to go back on. I'm going to set it down. But yeah. And Jennifer, who would know, living very near Robin Hobb, having the source of information, so writing non-Realm of the Elderlings right now, even though, like I said, I'm totally okay with, I'll read whatever she writes. I'm totally game. Who's an author you love that you don't hear or see talked about on social media? So the big one, which I probably talk about too much, but I absolutely have been loving so far, I still need to finish the series, Kate Elliott. This is the first book of Crown of Stars, King's Dragon. I know the cover's weird. The covers are on all of them are weird. This is not the worst one by far. This is a kind of a classic. It's from the 90s, but it feels very classic epic fantasy series that I've really, really been enjoying so far. Just with really great characters, fantastic world building, and all kinds of stuff. So I have a ton of her other books, but she doesn't get a lot of credit. And usually people who have read her seem to really have enjoyed her too, but just not an author I hear get talked about a lot. I have mentioned previously, and after reading his latest book, I've mentioned previously Peter V. Brett, who wrote The Demon Cycle. I feel like that tends to be pretty underrated, but his new book in the same world, I did not like at all, so I can't really super recommend that anymore. So Kate Elliott's a go-to. But then there's like Stephen R. Donaldson. I don't feel like gets talked about a whole lot. He's a classic author that I really, really enjoyed. And so that's a big one. Let's see. I'm still reading, like I said, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Tad Williams, I feel like it's talked about a decent enough as like a classic author, but he's literally like he's still writing, and there's new books coming out in that world, and he's written a lot of other stuff too. So that's definitely another one I would mention. Yeah, those are definitely a couple I would say. I've done a long time ago. I did a video on some underrated ones where I mentioned Kate Elliott. I think the Demon Cycle too, and I mentioned. I'll grab the book. This you can't get this hardcover anymore; it's out of print. But David Keck, he is an author. He wrote "In the Eye of Heaven" and "In a Time of Treason," which I have the original hardcovers. I actually had to find this one. I loaned it out and never got it back. But I found these randomly at like a thrift store, and it was an unfinished trilogy. And after like 10 years, he got a new deal with Tor, and they released a new hardcover for the final book, and then paperbacks for the other ones, reissued them. But it's a really solid trilogy. It's not like mind blowing, but I would say for people who like medieval, dark, gritty, kind of low magic fantasy, which was, I mean, Game of Thrones, really popular, but I don't feel like anybody has ever heard of this series. And it wasn't a super big series, but I think it's worth a read if you like this sort of thing. Kevin Hearn. I have heard a bit about him because I know Andrew read the Iron Druid Chronicles, and I have the first two books. They're down here. I can't get to in his new series, A Plague of Giants, and whatever the second one's called, something of Ravens. I can't read it. I'm sorry. They're under a stack because I have a lot of books. But yeah, I have those. I haven't read them yet. But I will definitely, when I get it read, I will definitely review it. So he's an author that I'm interested in, and the series sounded really good. Love Robin Hobb, love Kate Elliott. You're definitely a winner, Jennifer. You're definitely a winner. I'm really excited to finish it. I've been meaning to get back to it, and I have not had a chance just because Robin Hobb was taking over a lot of my life, and I really enjoy Kate Elliott, not as much as Robin Hobb, but I mean, it's really hard for any author to compete with Robin Hobb, so that is not anything bad to say about Kate Elliott. I've really been enjoying it. And I read her newest novella, too. I got an e-arc for The Servant Mage, or just Servant Mage, I think, which I'll have a review coming out sometime in like January when it comes out for it. I recorded it a while back, but which was pretty good, too. And I have, like I said, a lot of her other books I'll read after Crown of Stars. Least favorite Stormlight book... I've rated them before now because it goes for me. It goes Way of Kings is first, and then Words of Radiance. I think Words of Radiance is technically the better book, but I love Way of Kings more. And so Oathbringer and Rhythm of War would be there. But I think upon rereading, I think I would probably put Oathbringer in the last slot. Rhythm of War, I know, had a lot of people did not like it as much as the others. I really enjoyed it. It had some slow parts, and I know all of the stuff with the singers was kind of different, but I thought it was really interesting all of the Cosmere connections made. So Rhythm of War, I think it was a really bold choice because if you're not Cosmere aware and you haven't read all of the other Cosmere books and like don't really pay attention to that, you're not going to get as much out of Rhythm of War. And even if you're more of a casual reader too, there's a lot of stuff in there. Like I've read all of this stuff and I've reread several, and there's still all kinds of things I only find out because I've seen people talk about them online. There's so much in there. It's really hard to catch everything, but I'm really interested to see where the fifth book goes. And the back half, I think, will have a lot more Cosmere connections. It sounds like a lot of the big events of the Cosmere will happen in Stormlight. And that's a really interesting path to take because casual readers might not enjoy it as much. And I mean, Stormlight is definitely a series that has more casual readers than probably any other fantasy series right now, because it's like, it's one of those best-selling books as it comes out. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Are there any books you DNF'd that you'll retry? Probably. What's the most recent thing I DNF'd? Oh, the most recent thing I DNF'd was the Skull and Stone, which I'm not really interested in retrying. I'm going to unhaul. But yeah, a DNF for me, it just really means that at what point I'm getting to, I haven't had anything to make me want to stay. And I don't DNF a ton. I used to not DNF at all. But I got to the point where there's so many books I want to read, so many books I have that I want to read, that it's hard for me to spend a lot of time on a book I'm not enjoying at all. So I will DNF now. I know specifically, I also hated Red Rising, which is really unpopular, and I own Golden Sun now. And I have promised Andrew that I will read Golden Sun at some point. And if I end up enjoying it, I also have to apologize to CK specifically as well. So that's when I plan to give the series another shot. But I don't DNF super often. Like another book I know I DNF'd was Acacia by David Anthony Durham, I think. And that wasn't bad. It just wasn't good. And I lost interest. And a lot of fantasy books are so long that if it's really not pulling my interest in, I just don't want to have to spend a ton of time on it. So I'm willing to retry. Like if I have a book that I DNF and everyone's like, oh my gosh, it gets so much better. Try it out, then I would definitely probably give it a shot. So I'm not opposed to it by any means. You know, I technically did DNF this, but it's completely Liam's fault. I randomly found the Cleric Quintet, which is by R.A. Salvatore, at like a thrift store or like a Goodwill or something like that many, many years ago. And I had just started reading them. And I read the first book. I thought it was pretty solid. It was, it seemed like it was more definitely for a younger audience, but it was a fun book. And I started reading the second one, and it once again, it wasn't really bad, but I just was feeling like reading something bigger. And so I had put it down and never ended up picking it back up. And then Liam on his blog before he started a BookTube channel ended up just doing this huge rant review about the whole series. And I read it and I died laughing at it. And I ended up, I think, unhauling the series. So I don't have it anymore. So I'm sorry, Jennifer, since you say it's really good. Liam does, to be fair, really not like R.A. Salvatore. He's trying to read all of the Forgotten Realms books, and he likes most of the authors more. So he may be a little bit biased, but it was one of those series that I had started, and I didn't even like hard DNF it. I didn't know when I was ever going to get around to it. So when I was looking to unhaul some books, that's when I got rid of, because I just didn't know when I would ever read it. I need to read Joe Abercrombie. I heard his new release is really good. That's another unpopular opinion of mine. You guys just keep bringing him up. I think First Law is vastly overrated. And I think Joe Abercrombie is a fantastic author, but I just also feel like he has a lot of flaws. So I read First Law. I liked the first book. I liked the second book more, and I did not care for the third book, Last Argument of Kings. Did not care for the ending at all. I read the first two standalones, Best Served Cold, which was okay. I had a lot of problems with it too. The Heroes is my favorite Joe Abercrombie book I've read so far, and the ending still kind of just he never knows when to stop, in my opinion, and so he just kind of really pushed the whole hero thing at the end of the Heroes, which just kind of annoyed me. That said, I have Red Country, which I will read, and I have the first two Age of Madness books, which I will read. So Abercrombie's one of those authors that I have a love-hate relationship with, because he's very talented, and like his character work is great. His plot work definitely needs some work, and just kind of like easing up on the over-the-top sarcasm could use a little bit of work. But he's an author I will continue to read. I'm just not really in any hurry. Because he tends to, even a book I'm really enjoying, he tends to do something that'll just sour it for me. So I definitely have a love-hate with Abercrombie. I know you throw shade at it, so it made me laugh. Like I said, it's all in good fun. And yeah, it is totally like that's with everything. Like I've just mentioned a bunch of books that I know people really like that I just said I didn't. So I completely agree. It's totally fine for people not to like things. Everybody's different. Even like when I was talking about Robin Hobb earlier, and I'm like, see, it all comes back to Hobb. I'm like, I love it so much, but I know some people don't, and that's fine. Everybody's different. That's why it's a great time for fantasy, though, because pretty much no matter what you like, there's a fantasy book for you. Even if you don't like fantasy typically, there are like low fantasy, magical realism. There's a fantasy book that's going to be about almost anything at this point because the genre has just exploded. So it's a great time for it because you can read pretty much anything. Yeah, I mean, he's not an author I would specifically recommend. He's very talented, but like I said, I have a lot of issues with his books. So it's definitely, if you really like character-focused stuff, he writes really great characters. He just does. I know he's technically grimdark, but it's more just like it's almost parody is what he does. Just really sarcastic parody is what he kind of goes to me. Someday is when I'm going to read Ringroll. I have it. That's one too. It ticks a couple of boxes because not only is it sci-fi, but it's classic sci-fi. So I like to read classics, and I need to read more sci-fi. So I will definitely read that. I need to make more of an effort with sci-fi, like I said. So it is going to happen. Definitely will. If you read any Recluse by Ellie Modisett, okay, actually, I have several of them because it is a series I'm very interested in reading. And I'm trying to see where they are now. I know I have a few. I made a list. I grabbed all I could find at half-price books. Because Ellie Modisett is another author that I've wanted to read out of the classic fantasy. And that's kind of got put on the back burner a little bit. But I also meant to continue reading the Drenai Saga by David Gemmell, and I haven't really gotten to it either. So I want to throw in some more of the shorter books like Recluse and Drenai and go in there because there's so much out there, and some shorter reads are nice. I've been throwing in some more random stuff, but there's so much stuff out there I want to read. But that is definitely on the list. I have at least the first book. I actually think I got the first 2 books, maybe. And I bought on eBay. It was literally a mystery box of 20 paperback sci-fi books. And it was a pretty good price, and you didn't know what you were going to get. And I did a video for it, like unboxing it and opening up and looking at what I got. And I feel like I got pretty lucky because I got some junk. But I also got several like books like that. I'm actually really interested in this. I've always wanted to read Modisett. So there is there is a fantasy book for you. If that's not a hashtag, that should be. So yeah, there is a fantasy book for you. I seriously, I wholeheartedly do believe that because there are so many fantasy books of so many different styles. I'd like, if no matter what you want, I'm sure there's a fantasy book for you. So maybe we should start There's a fantasy book for you show where people are like, well, there's probably not one for me. And then we're like, yes, there is. And we find it. Let's do it. I need a campaign button with that. That would be perfect. I wonder if anybody's ever thought of that, but that would make some good merch. Like hashtag, there's a good fantasy book for you. Yeah. Don't you dare say it. No more bunny reads. That's actually a super good point. I do really want to read Conan. And I want to read the originals first, but specifically Robert Jordan wrote a bunch of Conan novels, and I've always wanted to read them because, Robert Jordan. So that'd be really interesting to try. And I know even the ones he wrote, I don't think are crazy long, but the originals I think are even shorter. So those are some things. Those I really want to read. Fritz Lieber, which I think you read some of his stuff recently. I really want to read some of the really classic sword and sorcery type stuff. Because I haven't read a lot of that either, and I'm really interested to try that out. So I think I have a couple of the books I've saved like my wish list, but I haven't bought yet for Fritz Lieber. But I really want to try out some of the really, really classic stuff because it's just I like to mix it up, and it's so interesting seeing some of that stuff. The Imager portfolio, I think I don't know if that's a Recluse book. I know there's a bunch of them. But Modisett has so many books that are written. And Recluse has a ton of books in it as well. And he's written other stuff too. So that's a 12-book series recently completed. So yeah, that's a whole different series. I mean, Modisett has written a lot. I really need to read his stuff. Her stuff? Is Ellie Modisett a man or a woman? I don't know. Oh, it's a man. Leland Exton. I find it funny when authors use the letters because Like, it was brought up to me that C.S. Freeman is a woman, and I'm like, I never knew. If I just like, if you're letters, I don't know if you're a man or a woman, and so I just kind of don't think about it, and it'll be brought up, and then I'm like, I don't know, to be honest, which is which. So usually first names, it's easier to tell, but even then, you never know. It could be either. A couple of imager, very heavy in political intrigue with great magic system too. So, political intrigue is one of those things. If it's done well, I enjoy it. But if it's just political intrigue, it can get to be a bit much. But I've really enjoyed that element in a lot of stuff that I've read. So, I agree. That sounds good. And yeah, it's well, you mentioned some of the stuff and were telling me about some of the Fritz Lieber stuff after I tried to buy them from them and their site wasn't working for me, but Indigo, which is not based in the US, but they apparently are supposed to ship here. Indigo has a thing called Ask Indigo, and they're like a bookseller, and you can fill out a little form, and then like a real person will respond to you with tailored book recommendations for you. It was super cool, and they recommended a series I'd already read and really enjoyed, showing it was a good recommendation, and also a couple of other series I was interested in, but that's actually where I heard of Fritz Lieber. That wasn't somebody I knew about, so that'll be interesting. I'll definitely be checking out to see what you say about other good sword and sorcery to check out, because I definitely need to look more. There's a fantasy book in you. I'm going to choose that to take. It's everybody has a fantasy idea to write, but I've had over the years a couple of ideas. There's still one idea I like and I think would be a good book if somebody would write it for me, because I don't think it's going to happen if I try to write it. It also partially, I realized years later, may or may not have been a partial Mistborn ripoff. There are differences too, but yeah, I feel like that was definitely where some of it came from. But yeah, I don't know. I've had some ideas, but I do not have the discipline to write a novel, and I respect the heck out of people who can, because I don't have it. Fred Saberhagen's Book of Swords. I've heard of that one. Okay, the Book of Swords I've heard of. The name sounds less familiar, but I will keep that in mind. It's just sometimes it's just nice. That's actually to not Hob this time, but to bring it to The Faithful and the Fallen. The Faithful and the Fallen is relatively new and does have some modern stuff, but so much of it really just had this classic sword and sorcery feel to it. And I think that's one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much, because it was incredibly quick paced. It had some modern elements, but so much of it felt like that could have been a series that was written, published in the 80s, and nobody would have batted an eye as for it, like, not fitting. Like, it just feels like it has so much of that classic elements to it. So I really want to read some more of like the big classic ones that I haven't read, or at least some of them I may have read when I was really young and I don't know. I know I read so many books that I don't remember. So I'll be interested. I'll keep that one in mind as well. Would you be interested in an Era 2 reread before 4? Well, you didn't use the word buddy reads, so I guess I can't yell at you, but actually, yes. I do absolutely need to read Era 2. I need to reread before the fourth one comes out, because I read Mistborn was already all out when I read the first one, and I've reread Era 1. Era 2 I read on release and only once each. Whereas like with Stormlight, I would reread all of the books up to the new one coming out. I didn't do that with Era 2, so I actually do need to reread Era 2 before the fourth one comes out, because I don't remember that nearly as clearly as most of the other stuff, because I only read it once upon release. So I got to do. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. It's holy crap. I've been going for almost an hour, so it's just I wasn't really sure how long this was going to last. It was kind of just seeing how long people hung out. So it works. Close to 600 now. I'm not sure what that's referring to, but okay. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. Sun Eater. That's another one I've heard a lot about and I have not read, but it definitely is something I will probably try at some point. I know Andrew specifically recommended that as something that might work for me as a sci-fi thing, just because of the fact that it has a lot of fantasy feeling elements. So I will definitely be trying that one at some point by Christopher Rocchio. Yeah, I had to think about it. I'm like, I know the author's name. I swear I do. But yeah, I definitely need more sci-fi, and so that's kind of what. That's where like this is where I'm at a loss because I have so many like continuing series I want to read, and then I'm like, oh, there's all these classic things I want to read. There are these new things I want to read, some sci-fi. I want to read some other stuff. This is why it's a never-ending struggle, and that's why I didn't do a TBR last month or this month. I'm kind of just reading what I read because there's so much stuff to read. There's always so many books. Oops. Oh, there it goes. My comment thing was messing up and blocking the bottom comments. So yeah, there are always so many books to read. Very much so. That's good to know. Yeah, I think that'll be a good way to bridge if I'm reading sci-fi that feels like fantasy. Because like I really like Dune. Dune, I would definitely say, despite having a lot of hard science elements, it also has a lot of fantasy elements. So I think that'll be a good crossover. If I went to just a full scale hard sci-fi, that might be a little bit more jarring. That's a really good idea. I could see that. I've tried to do like I've done random stuff too with books, but I try to just switch it up. And before I was doing so many buddy reads, which is why I made the joke about no more buddy reads. Because I was doing so many buddy reads that's pretty much all I was reading. And I just felt like I was getting a little bit burnt out because I wasn't like just being able to kind of grab anything. So I did some random books. I did like the booktube spin this time as well for some random books. But sometimes I'll just legitimately look and be like, that sounds interesting. I'm going to read that. And kind of go from that route. So there's I've definitely had some random books that I just decided to read that have worked out really well. That's also how I choose books half the time, almost in like half price books. Like, this looks kind of interesting. Let's look at it. I like to go in blind, so I don't read a ton about books, but I've grabbed a lot of random ones. So, Fit to Be Read recommends The Stars My Destination. It's an interesting name. Sci-fi, unlikable protagonist, hellbent on revenge, and doesn't feel dated. So is it an older one, I'm guessing? I don't think I know that one. The Stars My Destination. American writer Alfred Bester. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of this one. So 24th or 25th century. Interesting. Oh, so this is from 1956. Huh. I'll keep that in mind too. Yeah, it sounds like from what you said, if it's a shorter one, I was just looking at the Wikipedia page. Yeah, something short like that. That'll be interesting to see, kind of something that's older and even if not feeling dated. So, or more modern. Tchaikovsky's 2021 charts. So Tchaikovsky is definitely an author that I want to read. I've heard a lot of good about his fantasy and his sci-fi. I recently got. I got to get the first book, or is it the third book that's missing? No, I think it's the first one. I have two of the books in this series. So this is Hyena and the Hawk. So I think Tiger and the Wolf is the one I need, which is the first book. They had the second two books for the longest time. I didn't get them, so I'll have to just get the first one so I can read that series. That one's fantasy, but I know I've heard really, really good things about his fantasy and sci-fi. And he had Shadows of the Apt, and I've heard a ton of good stuff with him too. Would you consider doing spoiler recaps of more popular books and prep for a new release? Spoiler recap of Stormlight Archive before book 5 or Shadow. I love that you asked that because I actually have spoiler summaries for all of the Stormlight books except for Rhythm of War. Those were some of my earliest videos where I did video actually. And besides, people seem to be pretty positive with them. I do have to go back because somebody told me that I think in the Way of Kings one, I might have accidentally mentioned things that happened in later books. I try to be really careful to make each one specific so that people are reading. But yeah, I normally reread the Stormlight books every time. So this time I thought, that's going to get harder the longer the series is. So I do have a summary where I go like chapter by chapter for Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer out on YouTube. For that. So, and somebody asked me, I think somebody requested it for Lightbringer. So if I ever reread that, maybe, or like for Shadow of the Gods, I very well may reread that when the second one comes out too. So I'll have to see. I honestly, those are some of my most viewed videos because they've been out for a long time and a lot of people have looked for them. But I never, I guess, like know what book series people are going to want that from. So yeah, if there's anything like that, I definitely would consider doing it again, because honestly, all it really was different is I would just make a quick note with like a summary, like this is what happened in that chapter, and go from there. So yeah, it's okay. I just got distracted by the next comment, but yeah, so I do have those for the first three, and when I reread Rhythm of War, I probably will do one for that as well, to have that out whenever it's getting closer to book 5. So I don't know if I'll reread all of them this time, since I have my own summaries I can watch, but I'll have to see. So Count of Monte Cristo in space. I don't know if you heard me talking about how much I love Count of Monte Cristo earlier, but if there was a way to sell me on a book, that is it right there. So I'm leaving. I still have my Google tab open for that one. I will definitely check that out because I love Count of Monte Cristo. So that's a really good way to sell me a book. Yeah, check them out. So especially if you read the first 3. I made those before I read Rhythm of War, so there's definitely no spoilers for that. There may be some like minor stuff. Like I said, I recently actually got a comment where somebody was saying, "Hey, you mentioned some things that don't happen in this book," and so I tried to be really careful. There might be a few things. Those I was doing, they were rereads. So I tried to be careful, but yeah, I always tell people if you need a summary, I'm sure there's some other people who've done summaries of them as well. I tried to literally go chapter by chapter, and I don't talk about everything, and I'm very brief, but most of the videos are probably like 40 minutes long just because they're huge books. So even being very quick, I had to talk about a lot of things. I did try to kind of mention if something was going to come up later. It was like noting, hey, this is important, even though it might not seem like it. But yeah, they're hopefully helpful. So like I said, I think my most viewed video ever is my video where I was showing the Farsi or illustrated editions and like doing a little review of those. Is by a lot my most viewed video ever. But I think the Stormlight summaries are all following up around that as well. So well, hello, well, welcome. Yeah, that is totally okay. It's I was gonna say, it seems like there's a few people listening, but this was, like I said, this was an impromptu one, so it wasn't a scheduled one. So I was not sure how this was gonna go, and this has been super successful because people have been here. So thanks for joining and listening in, even if you can't chat too much. I still appreciate you tuning in. We're back to Malazan. That's going to take a second to answer, so I'll say hi to Ursi really quick. Hi, yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I'm going to say yes. Malazan is not an easy series to read. I don't think for most people. Some people have just read it and absolutely loved it. So if it's a series that clicks with you, it may be. But for me, even though I really appreciated it, I had a rough time reading the series. Usually it would take the first half of the book before I'd be into it, and I'd be like forcing myself to read the first half of pretty much every book in the series, and then I would be so hooked for the last half. But they're long books. Erickson does not like to give you a lot of answers. You're just kind of thrown right into the middle a lot of times, and so it is not an easy series to read. I would not say it is a difficult series. I do think it's worth it, but I always tell people, if you're reading it and you're not enjoying it and you don't want to continue, I get it. It's not like you're dumb because you don't understand Malazan. It's just Malazan is not an easy series to read. It's rough. I'm a very, I'd say, senior fantasy reader, and I've never read anything that I struggled to read more than Malazan. So I always tell people that I do think it's worth trying and it's worth finishing, but I get it if you don't, because I mentioned earlier, if I was reading it for the first time now, I really don't think I would have finished the series. It took me almost a year to read the whole series, and I read almost nothing else through that time because it just made me not want to read until I got to the second half of the book, and then I would read them so fast because I couldn't put them down. But it was a tough series, so I always just try to give that disclaimer. I think it's worth it. I do think it's a top tier fantasy series easily. Like everybody says, you know, when you see everything come together, it is a masterpiece, but it's that easy. So let's see. Me too. My wallet hopes no, but you betcha if they come out with them for live ship and then the rest, I will buy them. I will love a full shelf of these. The illustrated editions are just some of the nicest books that I own. Everything about them, they just feel like they were made with so much care. I love them so much. Well, see you later, Boiled Jellyfish. Thanks for joining in. Remember to boil your jellyfish. I'll try. I'm hoping I don't come across some jellyfish, but I will boil them if I find them. So, all right. Same sort of feeling with the Dark Tower series. So it's funny that you say that because I recently tried to read The Gunslinger, and it was the fastest I've ever DNF'd a book in my life. It just nothing clicked for me or worked for me at all with it. That is one that would have been the perfect answer when I was asked earlier if I would try a DNF again. Because yes, I do want to try to read that again. And it did help that a lot of people told me that, yeah, the first book's not that good. And a lot of people end up DNFing it several times and then loving the series. So I think that's going to be another one of those series that I'm not going to force myself to like jump right into it. I'll probably do it over time. But I do want to give it a shot because I have heard that is the series that gets much, much better and much better on reread as well. But the first book was just not doing it for me. And so I ended up putting it down. And Tracy, yeah, I will 100% be giving it another shot. The Gunslinger did not work for me, and I ended up putting it down pretty quick. I just was not enjoying it at all, and I heard that's pretty normal though. So like that's why I said it was reassuring that people are like, yeah, that's pretty normal. The first book is rough, but it gets a lot better. So I will give it another shot. That movie I didn't like. I'll say that. I remember seeing that movie and being like, this is weird. I didn't really care for it that much. Yeah, no, that's normal. Understanding about 25% of what you hear is probably pretty normal. If anybody tells you that they understand everything that's thrown at them their first time through Malazan, they're lying. Because, I mean, if you've ever seen any of AP Canavan's videos, like he'll spend an hour breaking down like a poem. Like there's so much, you're never going to get all of it. But that's why too, it is a series I really want to reread because it was hell getting through it the first time, but I think I would appreciate it so much more and reread. And so that's why I really do want to reread it, even though I had a rough time with it reading the first time. Any new fast-paced, quick fantasy recommendations to fit in between chunkier, heavier, epic fantasy series? So I've actually been trying to do some shorter books lately. That are in there because I need some. So Discworld is always, I feel like a pretty safe bet if you need a break from chunkier books. I did recently read Dragonslayer by Duncan M. Hamilton, which is a pretty short book. It's the first of a trilogy. I love the cover. I will say this was really, it's the, retired hero is a drunk now and has to come back to slay a dragon. It is exactly what it sounds like. So it's very tropey, but it was light and worked pretty well. Let's see. Chernai books. Legend, the first Chernai book was pretty short and was really good. I really enjoyed that. What else? I just started Cradle. The first book on Sold is a really fast read, and I've heard that they're really, really good. So that was one that I got through very, very quickly as well. So that'd probably be a good one for something fast-paced. If you want something like super fast-paced but also long, Faithful and the Fallen. The books are all like 600 pages, but it reads like it's 300 pages. So those are longer, but also so fast for reads. I was actually reading those between really heavy books, even though they were also pretty long. So they're not super short, but they are very, very quick. So those are some ones I would definitely recommend. It's still weird, but better. I kind of figured, yeah. Gunslinger was super weird, and I'm okay with weird to an extent, but I will try it again at some point for sure. Accidentally picked up book 4 first, which I enjoyed, and it's my favorite. I feel like that's a series. Maybe you could do that. And you wouldn't know any better because they're so strange. It could be. I don't know yet. I hear they are. I have the first one, Leviathan Wakes, and I have not read it yet. It's one I really do hope to read by the end of the year because I've had it for a while now. And it's supposed to be good. I know, so I tend to have really similar taste to Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. That we joke we're the same person because we have similar taste. So we liked the first book. Said at some points it was a little rough because you could tell the two authors were kind of figuring out how they were going to do it, basically their writing style. But I think it's supposed to be very good, and the first book be solid. So I will most certainly do a review for the first book when I read it. I don't have the others yet, but I do plan on reading them. That's one of the big sci-fi ones that everybody talks about. And so I do want to give it a shot to try. So I knew what you meant too. So the comments, you're good. Those are definitely books that I do want to try. Absolutely. So we've kept, like, there's been some people coming and going. I can't believe that this has kept pretty steady for viewers. So just a big thank you, everybody, for showing up. Like I said, I didn't know if this was going to be a really short stream or not, or if there were people here and chatting, then I was kind of fine to stay for a while. So I don't know how much longer we'll go, but I'm definitely game to keep going. Jennifer, you are hitting every single one today. I have started this actually just barely, not technically. I am so excited to read the series, and I'm also just like wondering how the hell I'm going to find the time to read the series. But there were some people in another Discord server who were starting it and were doing a buddy read. And I told them to let me know when they started. And I couldn't resist. So I read the first chapter of Curse of the Mistwraith. And it was so crazy. And I really want to read it. But they're very long, and it's supposed to be like very dense and like not something you can casually read. So I know I need to do it. I'm so excited to read The War of Light and Shadow. I read The Cycle of Fire, which is over on my shelf over here, which is one of her older trilogies, and I really liked it conceptually, but it was kind of slow, and I enjoyed it overall. But then I read the first chapter of Curse of the Mistwraith, and it was just, you could tell, whole nother level. It was so good. I really am so excited to read it. I just desperately need to find the time. I might, since I'm not reading a Robin Hobb book again until December, and even then it's shorter ones, I might try to still get at least the first book read. But then I also have the Crown of Stars series, like I was saying, I want to get read. So there's so much stuff, but I'm really excited. Yeah, thanks so much for showing up. This has been a lot of fun. I haven't done a random live stream before, so I really enjoyed this too. So thanks for stopping by. You have a great weekend as well. Oh, to War of Light and Shadow? Ooh, that could be really interesting. So that'd be interesting to see. I read something she wrote about the series. We're just talking about how it's very much not for something you can read casually, and that like different books or different POVs would tell you very different things because people aren't always saying like what they mean or whatnot. So it's supposed to be like this really complex world. But yeah, like I said, from the first chapter, I was very much intrigued. So I am super excited to give that a read. I just need to find the time. Oh, yeah, somebody who has read. So Scott says, big fan of Expanse. Definitely has its ups and downs, like any long series, but really fun characters, interesting plot, constantly growing scope, awesome TV adaptation. I don't know if you believe it, but I've actually never seen the TV show. I've been aware of it, but I've never actually watched it. And then when I realized it was based off the book series, I always told myself I'd read the books first, and then I still haven't gotten around to it. But so there you go. I knew we probably had somebody who had read Expanse because it's very popular, and I do still want to read it. But yeah, I'm excited to read the series. Like I said, I need more sci-fi anyway. So it'll be good to get some of that and read some of that as well. So I'm excited to get to it. And like I said, I have a lot of things I wanted to read by the end of the year, some of them which will not be happening for sure. But I haven't broken out my list in a while. I had a list I made like at the end of last year, beginning of this year, of everything I wanted to try and read. Is that here? I don't know if that's on here or not. Here's my list of Recluse and War of Light and Shadow books to look for at the used bookstore. I have a Discworld list too, but I have almost all of those. And then Trini's on there too. So I've been meaning to read them for a while. I ended up getting the first one on Kindle. Yeah, I don't know that is here. I don't know. Somewhere I have it. Yeah, I don't know. But it's there's always just way too many things to read. It's always the way that it goes. Hello, welcome to the party. I'm not sure how much longer we're going to keep going, but I didn't expect to go this long. But there's been every time somebody has to go and heads out and says they're heading out, somebody else heads in. So welcome. This has been a lot of fun. I did just remember another answer I probably could have said for the question about trying something in DNF. I don't know if it counts as a hard DNF at this point, but I started Priory of the Orange Tree in August and have not picked it back up. I didn't get very far, but I wasn't liking it that much. And I had other stuff I wanted to read, mostly Robin Hobb, among others. And so I put it down and I haven't gotten back to it yet, but I do plan on at least continuing. It wasn't like I wasn't hating it. I just wasn't liking it that much. So I'll have to see if I keep going with that. But I've just been kind of reading whatever. I made like a list of things that I might read for this month. I have too many things in this little notebook, but I don't for sure know. So I did read, which I recorded the review for today too. I read She Dreams in Blood recently, speaking of which, going back to Scott, if you're still here, I don't know how I forgot to mention this. If you like darker stuff, the first book of the Obsidian Path is Blackstone Heart, and then She Dreams in Blood. These are both very quick. They're like 300 to 400 pages, but it's double spaced, so it's really not that long. I don't think you can see that, but they're very, very quick. I got through these so fast, and they were really, really good. These are by Michael R. Fletcher, who's awesome. So these are the first two books I've read from him, and I really, really enjoyed them. But I would definitely recommend these as some other quick ones. They're pretty dark, though. He writes it pretty much only grimdark, I think. But those are so good. So goodbye, Jennifer. Goodbye, Lynette. So there we go. Yeah, it's not quite 5 p.m. here where I am, but yeah, I probably, like I said, won't go for too terribly long. So it seems like we're probably coming to a natural end, so that works out. But thank you guys so much for joining, Jennifer and Lynette. I really do love the covers. I found out shortly after buying these that they did that he had hardcovers come out. And the hardcover for She Dreams in Blood looks really similar, but Blackstone Heart is more black. But I really like the original cover. But I do have two, which I still, it seems like it's not a real thing. So Michael R. Fletcher is actually on Slowly Read's Discord, and I was talking to him there and just made a joke because he does music too. Like he's very multi-talented. And I was going to try and see if I could pull it up. I don't think I can share my screen because I only have one screen. But there actually is. We started collaborating on some music, which is on all streaming services under the name Blackstone Heart as a band name. So if you like metal music, you can check it out and see someone. We actually have a song called Tales of a Blackstone Heart, which is about the book Blackstone Heart. Because after I read it, I'm like, you have a song with that title. I got to put some lyrics to it. So I do the lyrics and the vocals, but that also does not color my opinion of the books because I love the books. But that's a really fun fact. Hello, Ellen. Welcome to the party. Yes, it's like I said, they're so good. Like all the other stuff is completely unrelated. I just mentioned it because I thought it was really cool, and it's been a lot of fun doing music and stuff with him. But I really enjoyed the first book and the second book. Like I said, I have a review that'll be coming out soon for the second book, which has some spoilers. But I have a spoiler free for the first one, Blackstone Heart, and it is just they're really, really good. And I'm so excited to try his other stuff because they're so quick, and I just went right through. And I could barely put them down. They're so strange, but really, really well done. It's a really interesting world. There's a lot of character study done, but I definitely recommend them. Yeah, they're really good covers. But it's because I have Beyond Redemption is this other book that I have and I haven't read yet. I read these first just because the covers looked cool. But Beyond Redemption was, I remember the one I originally heard about from Slowly Read and sounded crazy interesting. Because that I think is like the one where like basically it's like if enough people think something, it becomes real. And so like you can manipulate people into believing something to make it real, basically. And it sounded super interesting. So I want to read that too. He's got a bunch of books, but Obsidian Path are the ones I read. I can confirm I really, really enjoyed those. So I'm glad you were still here, Scott, for me to talk about that. Because I completely forgot, even though She Dreams in Blood was sitting right in front of me. For sure. I was trying to think, are there any other shorter books I can recommend? Mark Lawrence's books that I've read so far, Broken Empire and Red Queen's War trilogy, are pretty short. A lot of people like Dresden. I've only ever read the first few, and I need to get back into Dresden, but Dresden are shorter books. I still have several of them. If you want really short, I mentioned earlier, Ocean at the End of the Lane, which I read in like 2 hours because it's very, very short. But this is like a kind of magical realism, I guess, by Neil Gaiman, and really, really good. I liked. Very different from what I normally read. This felt more almost like literary fiction than anything else, but this is super good, and this is really, really short. It's like 160 pages. That's actually slightly longer than I thought, but I read this in one sitting, so that was a good one. That actually got me out of my reading slump after reading The Poppy War. I tried, after I read Poppy War, I tried starting like 3 or 4 different books. I couldn't get into anything, and that got me out of it. So, Vlad Tautos by Stephen Rust. I have some of those, I think. I got a random one called Dragon at Half Price Books, not realizing it was part of a series. And so I ended up getting, I think, a collection that has like the first 3, maybe. Am I thinking of the wrong thing? So I'm thinking of, that's Jarek. Is that the same thing? Jarek, is that the flag? Stephen Breast. That is the, okay. That is Vlad Tautos. I had to think for a second to make sure I was talking about the wrong, the right thing, not the wrong thing. Yeah, so I have the Book of Jarek, which is like 3 Vlad Tautos books somewhere. So that's another one I need to try because I've heard good things about Stephen Rust as well. I haven't read any of his stuff. Loved Ocean at the End of the Lane. Nice. Yeah, Dresden I still need to read. I'm pretty confident. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah, Blackstone Heart, like I said, I definitely recommend. It's dark. It's very, very good though, and they're very quick reads. Super interesting. And the freaking endings though. Plus, the 3rd book should be coming out sometime next year. I think early 2022 is what he said. But I'm really excited to read it and his other stuff too. But glad that you've read some of those other things. So that's I felt like those were some really wide recommendations. So the fact that you like several of those, that works. First one, yeah, it's like I think it's a collection. I thought maybe it's not that had multiples in it though. Book of Jarek. It's got book 1 of 13. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is just the first one. The first 3 Vlad Tautos and 1 volume. So it has Jarek, Yendi, and Tekla. Those were hard to say. So that's the one I have. I have it's a paperback of the first 3. So yes. So I was talking to Joanna about that too, and she read She Dreams of Blood just recently too. And I know she was telling me I had to hurry up and read it so we could talk about it. So I still have to talk to her on Discord about it too, because I know really, really enjoyed them the same way. We both read Blackstone Heart around the same time, I think. And then she read She Dreams in Blood just slightly before me. So really cool concept and world, and just they're very enjoyable for sure. So, well, we're coming up to just about an hour and a half actually, which that's still pretty crazy. It looks like we're starting to slim down. I know a lot of people have had to go, which that's going to totally okay. I'm still surprised this many people showed up. But anybody got any final questions, book recommendation things? I figure it's probably around time to start wrapping up. You guys have made me want to read some of the other books, some of which I own, which is rough because I'm not really doing a TBR, but now I just feel like throwing all the things I already thought about reading and reading a bunch of different stuff. Oh, this is why BookTube is so dangerous. Always wants to make you want to buy more and more books, which is why I own so many books, because there are so many. So, but. Well, I haven't seen any other comments come through in that minute since I've been talking. So I'll give one last call if anybody has anything. Otherwise, I think might wrap up here. But oh, and it looks like Scott is on his way out here too. So yeah, it looks like a lot of people have been having to head out. So I think this is a pretty good time to leave. I know some people just got here not that long ago. So sorry. But yeah, I've just about an hour and a half been going, but this has been so much fun. I wasn't really sure, like I said, how this would work since this was just kind of last minute, but based on this, I really enjoy doing this. So I think I definitely might try to schedule some more just miscellaneous live streams, just to kind of chat and hang out, because I really enjoyed this. It did not. It was whenever I actually saw the counter, I'm like, it did not feel like I've been talking for that long, but I would get really thirsty and have to have some water when I realized I've been talking for forever. So that was fun. But yeah, good luck with Reaper's Gale. You're making a really, really great progress with it too. And also, yeah, everybody have a nice weekend as well. And thanks so much, like I said, for everybody who showed up. Everyone's still here. Everyone here from the beginning and just being active in the chat. So that made this time fly by, and it would have been a lot more boring if it was just me trying to monologue for the whole time. So as always, I really appreciate everybody who showed up here. And thanks so much. And I'll have a bunch of new videos hopefully out here for you soon. So bye now.